Welcome to NBA Today. I'm Malika Andrews. We start today with news out of Brooklyn. Steve Nash has been fired as head coach after 2+ seasons with the franchise. Steve Nash released a statement thanking the organization and fans for his time with the Nets. I want to dive into the news with our panel today. Richard Jefferson, Vince Carter, and Chiney Ogwumike. Rich, I'm going to start with you. Just your initial reaction here.
Well, again, let's go back to when he was first hired, and there was conversations, with Kyrie and KD about, we don't really need a coach. And so immediately at that moment in time, he was under an extreme amount of scrutiny. Then you fast forward, they put together a very, very strong team, great supporting cast. They brought in talent. Look, an ankle injury and a hamstring injury in the same postseason that had these boys were cooking. It looked like they were on their way to possibly winning a championship. So now you're in a spot where it's like the next couple of years, they just so many distractions and things that happen made it very, very difficult for them to accomplish their goals. And head coaches know. They know the deal when they sign up. I was with Steve Nash at Kevin Love's wedding this summer. And head coaches understand that how quickly it's performance-based, especially when you have that amount of talent. They know that they are the first ones to go.
And you say performance-based, it's actually year to year. Nowadays, it's like you can be a winning coach and still get fired. You can be coach of the year and still get fired. And that's the unfortunate thing. When you take a job like this, particularly in the New York market, RJ, we know how that is. It's like everything is under a microscope, and you're under scrutiny, whether you're winning or losing. Did you do this? So Steve Nash walking into this job, like you said, RJ, he didn't have a fair shot.
No.
And when you have a Kevin Durant, when you have Kyrie, James Harden, you're expected to win now, regardless of how many if it's your first time at it or not. So that's just kind of how it works, and it's unfortunate to be in that situation. But I think Steve Nash will get another job.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, let's bring in senior NBA insider Adrian Wojnarowski, who broke the news of this story. Woj, why did the Nets make this decision now?
Malika, just the unraveling to start the season, really a worst-case scenario for Steve Nash in the Nets. Ben Simmons not playing at a very high level from the very beginning. Certainly just how bad defensively this Nets team was, 29th in the league. Out of the gate, that 4-game losing streak, and certainly, and probably not the least of all, the Kyrie Irving situation that has hung over this team, that continues to hang over this team and league. And I think for Steve Nash, as much as Brooklyn felt that they had gone as far as they could with him as head coach, I think he felt the same, that he was just not the coach for this team anymore. They've been discussing this over recent days, ownership, Steve Nash, Sean Marks, their GM, and made the decision today that they were going to part ways. And now Brooklyn is the hiring of Ime Udoka, the suspended Celtics coach, is imminent. That could be completed, I'm told, as soon as tomorrow.
So Jacques Vaughn is coaching tonight against the Bulls. He was also the interim coach in Brooklyn in 2020. I am curious, Woj, though, what level of vetting is taking place in Brooklyn in their possible hire of Ime Udoka?
Yeah, and I think that's what they've been spending time on that. There have been other teams around the league who've been spending time trying to get ahead of the possibility of bringing Ime Udoka in at some point and trying to understand the story and why he was suspended and ultimately was not going to return as the Celtics coach. There is history, certainly, with him in Brooklyn. He was obviously on Steve Nash's staff before he went to Boston. And he was in San Antonio for a number of years with Sean Marks, the Nets GM. So they know him well. And even Ben Simmons, remember, he was in Philadelphia for a year with Doc Rivers. And so, or in Philadelphia with Ben Simmons, certainly, and has a relationship with him. And that's really going to be a big part of this job, is getting Ben Simmons going again. But certainly, listen, the Nets are going to have to answer questions about Udoka's hiring and the vetting they did do. We've reported on the reasons Boston, among them, the independent law firm's probe that led to his suspension, which is ultimately really a dismissal. And, Boston is going to, all along, they were going to allow Ime Udoka to take another job, whether it was an assistant or a head coach. But certainly there's a lot of risk here. There's a lot of desperation in Brooklyn right now to try to piece this franchise back together to hold on to this season and keep a group in place that certainly feels right now like at a number of other points in the last couple of years is on the brink.
There's just so much, Woj, that is swirling around the Nets right now. You mentioned Kyrie Irving earlier. Is this the first of multiple possible moves in a new strategy, or is this the only move that they're going to make in an attempt to turn this team around?
I think that remains to be seen, Malika. I think certainly bringing Ime Udoka in, I think the belief is that he can try to stabilize this team. Just certainly his presence in leadership, he has commanded respect not only as an assistant coach and what he did in Boston last season was certainly remarkable, getting them within 2 games of an NBA championship. But this is a team that I think, especially again on the defensive end, to get them better there, they just can't compete right now without really making significant improvement there. And I think his ability with Kevin Durant, with Kyrie Irving, with Ben Simmons, to be a leader of this group, to command their respect. I think they think Ime Udoka is the best candidate to do that. Will he be able to do that? Is there any coach on this planet who can coach this team? We'll find that out. But certainly, this is in a lot of ways a last gasp, desperate move, I think, for this Nets group as it's currently constituted, to try to get some continuity, some traction on actually winning something in Brooklyn before this whole thing is imploded.
Woj, thank you so much. We'll see you a little bit later in the show. As we continue to cover this news out of Brooklyn that Steve Nash is out as head coach, Chiney, we heard from Vince, we heard from Richard. What's your reaction here?
Listening to Woj talk, and we saw the graphic overlay about the defense, I actually sort of had an epiphany, but not like a huge epiphany. So if we can put that graphic up about the Nets defensively, I think that 29th this year in defense, that category is emblematic of why they made the decision to part ways with Steve Nash. Because when it comes to defense, you're worse than the NBA. And what is the best thing you can do as a head coach? Get buy-in from professionals defensively. And also just making sure that you have great coaching to hold you down if your offense is not there. And so I think that gaping disability that the Nets had defensively just sort of showed that as pros, the best thing you can do is get them to play defense, play inspired. And that's where things were missing. Now, when you look at the big picture of the Nets overall, I think we're seeing maybe a shift from when we had so many stars aggregate and be able to call the shots. Because circumstances where that work, we most notably go to LeBron and D-Wade and Chris Bosh in Miami. And they had a structure with the Miami Heat where they knew their organization inside and out. And so there was accountability and balance. You think about the same thing with the Warriors. You even see the burgeoning Suns. When you have stars really dictating quite a bit, based on their talents, and rightfully so, you need to also have an infrastructure that is impenetrable from the coach to also the organization. I think there was a lot of great ambition here. It just seemed like that foundation was not as sturdy as we've seen when other stars aggregate.
But if the foundation that is Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, Ben Simmons, all of these mainstays who are incredibly talented are still there, I mean, I guess that's my question, Vince. Is it that simple? New head coach, new chapter for Brooklyn?
Well, I'll say this one thing to add to that is, if your coach has lost his locker room, that's another thing as well. You look at the defense at 29th, like you said, but when your coach walks in and doesn't have command of his locker room, that's when I think an organization also feels it's time to move on as well.
Well, there's a word that Chiney used that's just rattling around in my brain, accountability. I'm not sure how that gets grasped back for Brooklyn.
It can be grasped back, but, look, if Ime comes in, and we all know Ime, if Ime starts talking to those guys the same way he talked to those Boston Celtics in a very high level of accountability, don't forget where the Boston Celtics were in this time last year, where they were in January. And then all of a sudden, they started understanding his message, and defensively, they became one of the best defensive teams that we had seen probably in the last couple of years. Given this Brooklyn Nets team, a fits going down the wire with Giannis, all the things that they did. No, is it different?
But you're talking about the mentality.
The mentality of, we showed a bunch of clips yesterday of giving up open threes. And it all depends. Are you going to let that slide, or are you going to sit people down? Because the Brooklyn Nets are an extremely deep team. So if somebody's not doing the things that they're supposed to, then you have to hold them accountable. I have never been on a great team in my life without accountability. And I've played 4 NBA Finals, national championship, Olympics. I have never been on a team that was able to accomplish things without high level of accountability, and I think that's where they were lacking, and I think it showed up in their play.
I want to bring Zach conversation now because it's not lost on me that Ime Udoka has done incredible things with the Boston Celtics. But it just seems like if we're having this conversation about Ime Udoka being hired by Brooklyn, where he was an assistant coach, accountability is the word I keep coming back to. Where is the accountability to women in the NBA? Zach, what do you make of this?
Let's just rewind the whole thing. The last 16 months in Nets land, after, as RJ said, they were very close to unseating the Bucks and doing who knows what in the playoffs when they had what will now forever be known as the greatest theoretical team in NBA history. Here's what's happened since then, and I had to write it all down, culminating in Ime Udoka's hire, which I'll get to, I promise. Number one, Kyrie Irving refuses to get vaccinated, misses most of last season after taking a hiatus from the season before. Number two, James Harden looks around and is like, oh, this stinks. I didn't sign up for this. I'm going to quit on the team until you trade me. Number three, they trade for Ben Simmons, who misses the whole season, has back surgery, and is now afraid to shoot or get fouled. Number four, Kyrie opts into the last year of his contract because nobody wants him. Number five, Durant demands a trade. Then when he doesn't get it, issues an ultimatum that Steve Nash get fired and Sean Marks get fired. That fails. Everybody comes back. Yay, everything's fine. The vibes are amazing. Oh, my God. Well, flash forward like 2 more weeks. The team stinks. Kyrie Irving tweets out a movie full of anti-Semitic tropes, refuses to answer questions about it, and now they fire Steve Nash and without any explanation hire the coach that the Celtics just suspended for what they deemed an inappropriate consensual relationship, which either means one of two things. Number one, they didn't vet Udoka at all, or number two, they've been vetting him this entire time while Steve Nash was the coach of the team. I'm so tired of it. This team has won 1 playoff series in 3 years. 1. Do something. Get something right, and then we'll talk about something else, because I'm tired of this.
That I don't know that anyone can say it better than that. Richard?
Well, Vince, the good news is our Nets teams are still the best Nets teams of all time. That's the best thing. No, but all kidding aside, the way that Zach just laid that out, and that there was more of that. And I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this. Thanks, Zach. I'm going to say this. Knowing the NBA as we do and knowing how it is a brotherhood and it is a relationship-based league, I'm going to go out on the limb here to say that given what happened this summer and with the Nets and then what happened in the somewhat preseason right before the season started with Ime, I have a feeling that Sean Marks and the Brooklyn Nets were like, if Steve Nash is not going to be our guy and this thing goes, where can we go? Because we have high-powered people. We have some of the biggest athletes on the planet here that need a powerful, strong voice. And they're like, well, let's start finding out more about this information. And so I'm not going to act like 2 days ago, the Nets were like, hey, I think we're having ifs and ands about Steve Nash. I think they were like, hey, let's get as much information as we can about Ime Udoka, about Quinn Snyder, about a lot of different people. So I won't sit up here and say that like this Ime thing was like quick and like, who can we go get? It was like, no, I think they have been vetting him probably this whole time, getting ready to make a decision.
Yeah, and I think there are rightful qualms when you hear about this, and particularly as women in the NBA, we understand what that narrative became. But I also understand that this day and age, organizations have to do their due diligence. And once they do their due diligence, they make a decision. And if the decision is based on basketball pertaining, Ime Udoka, it makes sense because of what he brings, the mindset of what he was able to do. I know a year ago we were talking about how Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum couldn't get on the same page. There was a power struggle with the Celtics. Yeah. Well, guess what? He reached out to both of those guys and got them on the same page, and you have to credit Marcus Smart, having that team camaraderie. Then you also think about the idea of the defense. I mean, he completely resuscitated the Celtics defense to the point that it catapulted them to the NBA Finals. And so I'm someone that trusts and believes that, especially when Adam Silver came, was it last week? Because I never remember time. Last week and said, hey, we've instituted tip lines or situations where we're trying to create a safe environment, not just for one team, but all teams. I feel like the Nets, like you said, they made the decision to vet him probably longer before this, and they're going to make a decision based on the legalities of what they deem acceptable. And if they so choose Ime Udoka, it seems like he is the right person for the job.
And let's talk about Ime really quickly. one of 5 rookie head coaches to lead a team to the NBA Finals. Included in that list is Steve Kerr and Tyronn Lue. Now, just look at those coaches when you look at now a little bit of longevity, and look at what Steve Kerr, and what T. Lue has done. So, you know, if you're going to say Ime is a part of that fold, I guarantee you the Brooklyn Nets would take T. Lue, or they would take Steve Kerr.
Look, at the end of the day, very few people, I believe, are beyond redemption. And I'm not saying that that's the scenario here. But what I am saying is I sincerely hope that when we talk about due diligence and vetting, the Brooklyn Nets are taking into account multiple voices on this and who could be affected, because we know that this is going to be ongoing. Still to come on NBA Today, we're going to check in with our friend Kendrick Perkins. He is joining the show. We're going to get his thoughts. There he is behind you, Richard. He is ready to go. We'll be talking.
Hey, what's up, guys? Jag from Jaggy Sports. Breaking news in the NBA. The Brooklyn Nets have let go of Steve Nash. And, you know, they obviously knew this was coming, because not too long after that, they have announced that they are planning to hire Ime Udoka, the guy that did his little thing in Boston, who was suspended for a year. He has a new job in Brooklyn as the next head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. Will he be able to control Kyrie Irving? Will he be able to control the defense? Will he be able to control Ben Simmons? I think possibly yes. And with him at the steering wheel of the organization and the team, I think they might just go to the finals, right? Like, I know everybody's saying they suck on defense. Well, this guy is very good in defense. He's gonna, look what he did with Boston, right? Look what he did with the Boston Celtics. And at the end of the day, I just thought that the Boston Celtics were holding Ime back. But that is not the case. Ime Udoka will be the next head coach of the Brooklyn Nets, and Steve Nash is gone. The problem was Kyrie Irving, their lackluster defense, thin on the boards, can't get the rebounds, you know, not even a big center. Now I'm also hearing that the Nets will trade for Jakob Poeltl, whatever, I can't remember his last name, sorry, from the Spurs in a trade. And I'm telling you, this is the marking of the Nets going to the finals. I said it once and I'll say it again. The Nets will go to the finals with Ime Udoka. If you guys have any comments on that, leave a comment in the comment section. Tell me, with Ime Udoka running the ship, do the Nets, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and Ben Simmons, go to the finals? I think it's possible. I really think it's possible. Well, I want to hear from you guys. Tell me what you think. This is Jag from Jaggy Sports.